When A Fistful of Dollars hit the screen in 1964, it changed cinema forever. From the gunslinging stares and dusty streets to the squinting eyes of the man with no name, A Fistful fight sparked a revolution that changed the whole of Western movies. How was Sergio Leone able to pull that off? Was it the choice of his casts or the chaos behind the scenes that made it a success? Of course, yes. Many masterpieces produced over the decades lack the perfect shot, and A Fistful of Dollars is no exception. Shot in a location that is entirely different from what was portrayed in the movie, with the set built from scratch, A Fistful of Dollars is a treasure chest of strange, surprising, and downright unbelievable facts that most fans have never heard. Did you know Clint Eastwood's now iconic poncho was never washed during filming? Or that this groundbreaking film was actually an unlicensed remake of a Japanese samurai classic? That's just the beginning. From sneaky lawsuits to a crew that barely spoke the same language, A Fistful of Dollars is a typical example of chaos turned masterpiece. So fasten your seatbelt and get ready to ride through 20 weird, wild, and incredible facts about the film that made Clint Eastwood a star and redefined the Western genre forever. Unofficial remake of Yojimbo. A Fistful of Dollars is widely recognized as a groundbreaking spaghetti western, but what many viewers didn't realize at the time was that it was a borrowed movie. Almost every scene in it was not just adapted but copied from Yojimbo, a 1961 Japanese samurai movie directed by the legendary Akira Kurosawa. In Yojimbo, a wandering Ramon, a masterless samurai played by Toshiro Mifune, arrives in a small town torn apart by two rival gangs. Instead of choosing a side, the samurai cleverly manipulated both groups to destroy each other. This exact storyline of a mysterious gunfighter coming into a corrupt town and playing both sides against each other was the backbone of A Fistful of Dollars, with Clint Eastwood stepping in as the man with no name. Sergio Leone, the director of A Fistful of Dollars, was not given the right to remake Yojimbo, and he never credited Kurosawa or the original story. At first it wasn't widely noticed. This might be because Yojimbo hadn't been released in many Western countries yet, but it didn't take long for Kurosawa and his team to find out. Kurosawa himself was shocked when he saw the film, but he didn't respond harshly. He only said, "It is a very fine film. But it is my film." Kurosawa and his production company Toho didn't waste much time in filing a lawsuit against Leone and the producers of A Fistful of Dollars. The lawsuit was successful. The court agreed that Fistful was indeed an unauthorized remake. As a result, Kurosawa was awarded the exclusive Asian distribution rights and a reported 15% of the film's worldwide gross. This was a massive win for Kurosawa. In fact, he later joked that Fistful of Dollars made more money for me than Yojimbo ever did. Interestingly, Sergio Leone at first claimed that his film was based on the novel Red Harvest by Dashiell Hammett. However, this was seen more as a defense strategy than a genuine source of inspiration. Eastwood later admitted in interviews that he wasn't aware of the connection at the time. In his words, "I just saw it as a very original Western. I hadn't seen Yojimbo, so I didn't know." Today, A Fistful of Dollars is recognized widely as a classic Western. Shot in silence but dubbed later. One of the strangest and most distinctive aspects of A Fistful of Dollars is that the film was shot entirely without live sound. Yes, no sound was recorded during the actual filming of the scenes. Actors would say their lines, which are often in different languages. And the gunshots? They were mimed. Likewise, all environmental sounds like footsteps, horses, doors, and wind were all added later in the studio. That means even the dialogue was dubbed in post-production. Why was this method used? Was it a stylistic choice or a budget-saving tactic? You got it right. The film was produced on a very low budget, and recording should have required extra equipment, crew, and time. So instead, director Sergio Leone and his team chose to dub everything afterward. This was a common practice in Italian cinema at the time. This technique led to some unusual results. For example, the actors spoke different languages during filming. Clint Eastwood, who played the man with no name, said English, Gian Maria Volonté, who played Ramon, spoke Italian, and many of the supporting actors spoke Spanish. Since no live audio was used, each version of the film, whether Italian, Spanish, German, or English, was simply dubbed for its target audience. While speaking with Richard Schickel in an interview, Eastwood recalled how odd it felt. It was kind of surreal. You just had to act like it was normal. This multilingual chaos created a strange, disconnected flow to the dialogue. The actors' mouths don't always sync perfectly. Also, some voices don't quite match the physical performance. Sergio Leone used this disconnection to his advantage. It made him focus entirely on the visuals instead of being locked into the dialogue on set. He carefully choreographed camera movements, facial expressions, and standoffs, and then built the sound design around that visual language. Modern audiences might find the dubbing strange or even distracting at first, but it's actually part of what makes A Fistful of Dollars feel so unique. Low budget but high style. A Fistful of Dollars is remembered today for its sweeping visuals, but behind the camera, the production was held together with scraps, tricks, and sheer creativity. The film was made on an extremely low budget, estimated at around $200,000. Some of the set constructions were so cheap that crew members later admitted they used painted cardboard to create fake building fronts or reinforce crumbling walls. So how did they achieve the stylized, iconic visuals? It was simple. Instead of focusing on wide shots that would reveal the flimsy construction, Leone relied on tight framing, selective camera angles, and clever editing to sell the illusion. To make the film appear richer, Leone shot long, lingering close-ups of characters' eyes, faces, and hands, giving scenes more emotional weight without needing expansive action or multiple camera setups. Clint Eastwood confirmed this in a 1980s interview, saying, "Leone didn't need a big town or fancy sets. He'd shoot a close-up of your face, cut to the other guy's hand twitching, and suddenly it felt like a $10 million showdown." Leone's editing style also helped stretch the budget, and despite the shoestring budget, A Fistful of Dollars looked stylish, bold, and cinematic. DIY smoke effects.
None! No tricks! I said before, I give you my word, we'll leave!
Are you sure? You had better ask for me.
Another striking visual element in A Fistful of Dollars is its realistic, dust-choked atmosphere. The gunfights unfold in hazy streets full of smoke, creating a dirty, lived-in frontier look. Many viewers didn't know that this wasn't the result of special effects or studio fog machines. It came from something far more dangerous and improvised. With a tight budget and limited access to professional film equipment, director Sergio Leone and his crew resorted to burning garbage, wood scraps, and even old tires just off camera to create clouds of dust and smoke. The smoke had a dual purpose. First, it added texture and realism to the image. Sergio Leone, while in a rare Italian TV interview, reported that the American West was not clean. "I wanted to show the dust, the dirt, the sweat, not the polished version of Hollywood." The second purpose is that the smoke helped hide the cheap set construction. As mentioned earlier, many buildings were made of flimsy materials such as cardboard or thin wood. Burning tires and garbage releases harmful chemicals. Although actors and crew members often complained about the harsh, choking air, the production team was not questioned because health and safety standards were more relaxed in 1960s European filmmaking, especially on lower-budget productions. While talking with popular critic Richard Schickel, Eastwood admitted, "You'd walk onto set and smell burnt rubber before the first take. They were just lighting whatever they could find to get that dusty effect." It was also reported that Gian Maria Volonté, who played Ramon, got into arguments with crew members over the smoke during intense scenes. He was known for being a serious, theater-trained actor and didn't appreciate working in what he considered unsafe conditions. Despite the discomfort, the effect worked. The ever-present dust and smoke gave the film a sense of chaos, mirroring the lawlessness of the town itself. Sergio Leone faked his name. When A Fistful of Dollars was first released, it didn't say "directed by Sergio Leone" in the credits. Instead, the name listed was Bob Robertson. At first glance, this seemed like just another typical American director, but in reality Bob Robertson was a made-up name for Sergio Leone, an Italian filmmaker from Rome. So why did Leone choose to hide his real name? The answer lies in the strange marketing realities of 1960s European cinema. At the time, spaghetti westerns, which are westerns made by Italian or European filmmakers, were not yet a respected genre. Westerns were seen as a strictly American tradition, and producers feared that international audiences, especially those in English-speaking countries, would not take a western seriously if they knew an Italian directed it. So to prove that the film is authentic, Leone agreed to use a fake American-sounding name. While speaking with a French film magazine in 1975, Leone laughed about it, saying, "They thought an American name would help sell the film. So I became Bob Robertson, but only for a little while." This trick wasn't unique to Leone. In fact, most of the cast and crew involved in the film were given more English-adapted names. For example, Ennio Morricone, the composer, was listed as Dan Savio. Gian Maria Volonte, who played Ramon, was credited as Johnny Wells. Even some of the Spanish actors used English pseudonyms. Eventually, once the film became a massive success, Sergio Leone dropped the pseudonym. The man with no name had a name.
Who are they? Bandits. Bandits and smugglers. They come down from Texas.
Clint Eastwood's character in A Fistful of Dollars is widely known as the man with no name. He was a mysterious, silent drifter who wandered into town, played two rival gangs against each other, and disappeared just as suddenly as he arrived. But the truth is, he had a name. In the original Italian-language version of the film, Eastwood's character is referred to as Joe. In the English version, Joe was removed, leaving the character unnamed. When A Fistful of Dollars was released internationally, especially in the US, distributors saw an opportunity to rebrand Clint Eastwood's character as a mysterious loner, stripped of any personal identity. This idea of a nameless hero appealed strongly to audiences in the 1960s. The man with no name label didn't even originate from the movie or Sergio Leone. It was actually created by United Artists, the American distributor of A Fistful of Dollars, when they marketed the entire Dollars trilogy, which included A Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Posters and trailers emphasized it, saying, "He's back, the man with no name." But the films themselves don't quite support the idea. In A Fistful of Dollars, he's Joe. In For a Few Dollars More, he's called Manco. In The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Tuco refers to him as Blondie. Clint Eastwood later addressed this inconsistency in a 2003 interview with Total Film, saying, "They kept calling him the man with no name, but he had a name in every movie. It just sounded cooler that way." So while fans and critics continue to celebrate Eastwood's character as nameless, he had a name. The gunfight was choreographed. What do you think about a film's score being recorded before shooting the movie? Weird, right? That makes A Fistful of Dollars more than just a movie, but a revolution. Director Sergio Leone treated gunfights like choreographed performances, almost like dances. This means the music came first, making the approach unusual. Traditionally, in filmmaking, especially in Hollywood, music is composed after a scene is shot and edited. A composer watches the finished footage and writes a score to match the pace, mood, and timing. But Leone flipped this process. He asked composer Ennio Morricone to write the music before the scenes were even filmed. This decision was practically unheard of in the early 1960s, but it allowed Leone to shoot scenes to the rhythm of the music, making them feel timed and poetic. Morricone recalled this unusual process in later interviews. "I composed much of the score before the film was shot. Leone played it on set. He told me, I want the gunshots to feel like part of the music." In fact, Leone would sometimes play Morricone's music over loudspeakers during filming, helping the actors pace their movements and reactions. This style became one of Leone's trademarks. This fusion of sound and image was a significant step in transforming the Western into a more stylized and emotional experience. Absurd recoil physics.
So?
One of the most unusual aspects of A Fistful of Dollars is how some gunfight scenes unfold with unrealistic, exaggerated reactions to being shot. Instead of the immediate natural fall we expect in typical westerns, enemies sometimes die in a delayed, almost choreographed fashion. Sometimes it looks like a martial arts movie, with fighters leaping, spinning, or dramatically collapsing well after the strike. This odd style of recoil physics gives the gunfights a surreal and balletic quality. But why prioritize performance over realism, knowing it reduces the movie's authenticity? The second reason is that Leone intentionally crafted gunfights with an operatic sense of drama. Instead of fast shootouts, he preferred to build tension slowly, with long pauses and intense close-ups. The third reason is due to the influence of other genres. Italian cinema of the era was heavily influenced by genres such as martial arts films and stage combat, in which stylized fight sequences often feature exaggerated falls and spinning blows to emphasize drama and spectacle. Gian Maria Volonté, who played Ramon, once remarked, "Sometimes it felt like we were actors in a play more than in a movie. Every shot was part of a ritual, and the way we felt mattered as much as the shooting." This surreal quality also adds a psychological edge to the violence. The delayed collapses make the killings feel unnatural, as if the characters are puppets or ghosts, caught in a cycle of revenge and death. In the end, the absurd recoil physics became part of A Fistful of Dollars' signature. Filmed in Spain, not Mexico. Although A Fistful of Dollars takes place in a dusty Mexican border town, the film was actually shot thousands of miles away, in the arid province of Almería, Spain. This region, located in southern Spain, is known for its vast open deserts, rocky hills, and sunny landscapes that look surprisingly like those of the American Southwest. Why Spain? The answer is both practical and economical. At the time, shooting in the US or Mexico would have been much more expensive and complicated. By filming in Spain, Leone and his producers could take advantage of low production costs and less stringent regulations. However, filming in Spain also meant some visual challenges. Leone and his team had to hide or disguise these European elements. Gian Maria Volonté once joked, "We were making a Mexican movie in Spain, but sometimes it felt more like an Italian village with too much dust." Despite these quirks, the Spanish desert setting helped give the film a unique, almost mythical quality. Moreover, this location choice helped shape the entire spaghetti western aesthetic. The success of A Fistful of Dollars put Almería on the map as a major western filming location. Fake border town. One of the most memorable parts of A Fistful of Dollars is the dusty, sun-baked town of San Miguel, where all the scheming, violence, and standoffs take place. But San Miguel isn't a real town. It was entirely constructed from scratch in the desert near Almería, Spain. Because the film had a tight budget, the production team couldn't shoot in a real functioning town with all the period-appropriate architecture. Instead, they built a full-scale fake town from scratch, using cheap materials like wood and cardboard. The wide, open streets and symmetrical buildings create perfect frames for Leone's famous extreme close-ups and dramatic wide shots. San Miguel's design was so successful that the same set was reused and redressed for dozens of other spaghetti westerns throughout the 1970s, 60s, and early 1970s, including The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly and Once Upon a Time in the West. It became a kind of cinematic soundstage in the desert, instantly recognizable to genre fans. Weather contradictions. Although A Fistful of Dollars is set in a blazing hot Mexican desert, much of the filming actually took place during chilly European winters in the Almería region of Spain. This created a strange contrast between the film's visual story and the real conditions on set. The actors, especially Clint Eastwood, had to pretend to be sweating under a fierce desert sun, while in reality they were often shivering in cold temperatures, wrapped in jackets between shots to stay warm. How uncomfortable might it be? Eastwood later talked about these challenges while being interviewed by American cinematographer in 1985. "You'd come out of your coat for the shot, squint into the light like it's blazing, then duck back behind the camera to warm up. It was freezing out there, but we had to make it look like a desert." This weather contradiction sometimes caused continuity challenges. For instance, an actor might sweat during one take and look dry in the next because the cold air quickly stops any perspiration. Makeup artists had to work overtime to keep faces shiny and dusty, simulating heat and sweat consistently. These weather contradictions also highlight the craft and dedication behind the film. The actors' convincing performances, the careful use of makeup and lighting, and Leone's tight direction all work together to sell the illusion of a scorching desert. Animals roaming freely on set. One of the subtle yet effective details in A Fistful of Dollars is the presence of animals like horses, chickens, and dogs that move naturally through the scenes, sometimes interrupting the action. These animals were not trained performers. They just wandered into shots and did their own thing. In many traditional westerns or big-budget films, every animal movement is carefully controlled and rehearsed. But Sergio Leone embraced the chaos and authenticity that came with having untrained animals on set. This choice gave the town of San Miguel and its dusty streets a sense of life, making it feel like a real place full of unpredictability rather than a sterile movie set. The animals' spontaneous movements added texture and a sense of everyday normalcy. Assistant director Gianni Baffardi once said, "Animals didn't follow orders. Sometimes a chicken would wander into a scene or a dog would bark unexpectedly. Leone thought it was part of the atmosphere and kept it in. Keeping these unscripted moments helped set A Fistful of Dollars apart from more polished Hollywood westerns." The iconic poncho was never washed. How would you feel wearing a piece of clothing for 3 years without washing it? Well, Clint Eastwood never complained. Few pieces of clothing in cinema are as iconic as Clint Eastwood's dusty green-brown poncho in A Fistful of Dollars. But what many fans don't realize is that Eastwood never washed the poncho throughout the entire Dollars trilogy, which includes A Fistful of Dollars, released in 1964 for a few dollars more, released in 1965, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which came out in 1966. But why did Eastwood endure the dirt, inconvenience, and possible illness that his poncho may have caused? The reason was nothing but continuity and realism. Eastwood and Sergio Leone wanted to create a consistent look for the man-with-no-name character. The poncho was more than just a piece of wardrobe. It was a visual signature that made him instantly recognizable from scene to scene, and even from film to film. Washing it would risk altering the texture and color. Eastwood reportedly insisted that the poncho stay as it was, saying, "It had a certain look and a certain smell, but we didn't want it to lose that. If you washed it, it would have fallen apart or looked too clean." The decision paid off. The poncho's grimy, worn-in look contributed to the dusty realism of Eastwood's world. Eastwood brought his own costume. When Clint Eastwood agreed to star in the low-budget Italian Western in 1964, he wasn't yet the global movie star we know today. He had just wrapped several seasons of the American TV series Rawhide, where he played Rowdy Yates, a cowboy character not so different from the one Leone envisioned for A Fistful of Dollars. And it was from this experience that Eastwood decided to bring his own costume. Instead of relying on Italian costume designers to create his look from scratch, Eastwood arrived in Rome with a duffel bag containing his own boots, Levi's jeans, spurs, gun belt, and a worn cowboy shirt. But the most iconic item of all was the poncho. Eastwood picked the poncho himself from a Western outfitter in California, reportedly because he thought it would give his character a distinct, mysterious look. The poncho had a Mexican flair, which suited the film's setting and made Eastwood's silhouette instantly recognizable. In a 1980 interview with film critic Richard Schickel, Eastwood said, "I figured if I was going to play a quiet, dangerous guy, he should look like an outsider. So I brought the boots, the jeans, and that old poncho, and never changed them." Wardrobe designer Carlo Simi supported Eastwood's choices and added small touches to blend the American items with the European setting. The result was one of the most iconic Western looks of all time. Clint Eastwood wasn't the first choice. Fonda, however, came with a hefty price tag far beyond the film's limited budget, reportedly calling the script confusing and too strange. With the top-tier stars out of reach, Leone and the producers had to look further down the ladder, and that's when Clint Eastwood's name came up. At the time, Eastwood wasn't a movie star yet, but he had the right look. He's tall, lean, with a quiet toughness about him. He was also very affordable. Eastwood later recalled in an interview, "I was tired of playing the young, eager cowboy on Rawhide. When I saw this script, it was different, more cynical, more interesting. I thought, why not?" So yes, Eastwood was Plan C, but he turned out to be the best possible choice. Shot in just 8 weeks. A Fistful of Dollars is now regarded as a Western that reshaped the entire genre and launched a new kind of cinematic anti-hero. But behind the realistic visuals and iconic performances lies a surprising truth. The whole movie was shot in just 8 weeks. That is, it took only 2 months from start to finish. In the world of filmmaking, especially for a genre film with location shoots, choreographed action, and a foreign cast and crew, an 8-week schedule was swift. Today, even small indie films often take longer to shoot, but director Sergio Leone was working with a razor-thin budget, an inexperienced international team, and a tight shooting calendar, so speed was essential. Working under the constraints of both time and money, Leone adopted a lean and efficient style of directing. He storyboarded everything in advance, knew exactly what shots he wanted, and avoided unnecessary takes. This focus helped the crew move quickly and also added to the film's stripped-down style, which became part of its charm. Cinematographer Massimo Dallamano described the process in an interview from Spaghetti Western Archives. "Sergio didn't waste time. We didn't shoot coverage like in American films. He knew what he wanted. A wide shot, a close-up, and that was it. No extra angles, no overtime." Eastwood's minimal dialogue. One of the most iconic elements of A Fistful of Dollars is how little Clint Eastwood's character actually speaks. His lines are sparse, his conversations brief, and his expressions say far more than his words. This wasn't originally some grand creative plan, but partly the result of practical limitations. Because the film was shot without synchronous sound, all dialogue had to be dubbed in post-production. This dubbing process could be messy, especially since the actors spoke a mix of Italian, Spanish, German, and English on set. The less dialogue there was, the easier it was to dub the film consistently across markets. So Leone, the writers, and Eastwood himself agreed to strip the character's dialogue down to the bare essentials. The man with no name's silence gave him an aura of mystery and menace. He didn't explain himself. He didn't boast. He just acted. This contrasted sharply with the typical American Western heroes of the time, who often delivered long, dramatic monologues on justice and morality. The squint was not intentional.
See, my mule don't like people laughing. It's the crazy idea you're laughing at him.
One of the most iconic elements of Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name is his piercing, sunlit glare from beneath the brim of his hat. It's been imitated countless times, becoming one of cinema's most enduring visual cues. But, like many aspects of A Fistful of Dollars, the squint was only born out of necessity. When filming began in the scorching desert landscapes of Almeria, Spain, Eastwood found himself under intense sunlight, often without much shade or shelter. Eastwood could have worn sunglasses between shots like some actors do, but he refused. He wanted to stay in costume and in character, so instead of protecting his eyes, he simply squinted. At first, it was just a way to cope with the brightness, but as production continued, Leone noticed that the squint gave Eastwood a hardened, menacing look. It was the perfect expression for a character who said little, but always meant business. Eastwood's glare became so integral to the character that Leone began to build shots around it. Clint Eastwood himself admitted, "Yeah, the sun was brutal. I couldn't open my eyes all the way without tearing up."
Get 3 coffins ready.
In the violent and dusty world of A Fistful of Dollars, where men are gunned down in the streets and families are torn apart by greed, the film somehow finds space for a strangely calm and funny character called Piripero, the coffin maker. Played by Italian actor Joseph Egger, Piripero stands out not for action but for deadpan humor and detached delivery. He operates on the edges of the chaos, crafting coffins with eerie cheerfulness and making dry, often sarcastic remarks in the face of brutal violence. When Eastwood's man with no name walks into town, the first conversation he has is with Piripero. The undertaker immediately exudes quiet cynicism, telling the stranger what to avoid. The camera cuts to Piripero, who says with clinical calm, "The moment is bizarrely funny, especially given the grim context." Piripero's calm detachment makes the violence around him feel almost absurd, which in turn makes the film feel more stylized and dreamlike. Change the Western genre forever. When A Fistful of Dollars hit theaters in 1964, it was a revolution that changed how people saw the old Western on screen. Before this film, Westerns were often clean-cut tales of good guys and bad guys, with clear heroes who fought for justice and villains who lost woefully. But A Fistful of Dollars changed everything. First, the film introduced a realistic, morally ambiguous tone. The violence in the movie was also unflinching. Gunfights weren't clean and tidy, they were tense, dangerous, and bloody. The film's soundtrack, composed by Ennio Morricone, was unlike anything heard in Westerns before. The haunting whistles, twangs, and unconventional instruments gave the movie a unique voice and mood, further distancing it from traditional Hollywood Westerns. This new style caught the attention of audiences worldwide and quickly sparked the spaghetti Western boom. Director Quentin Tarantino, known for his stylized violence and morally complex characters, has openly credited Leone's work as a massive inspiration. Similarly, director Robert Rodriguez has acknowledged how Fistful of Dollars shaped his approach to Westerns and genre filmmaking. Leone's film paved the way for American Westerns to embrace more complex storytelling and character development. What have you learned from these weird facts about A Fistful of Dollars? Share with us in the comments and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the like button and watch other videos on this channel before you leave.